The Death God's Daily Troubles by MagicalDucky. Chapter 12. 1,000 Years of Alchemy and 1 Year of Budget Cuts. Royal Academy, Room 207. Kyle's Point of View. The warm sunlight outside was beginning to seep into the room as the awkward silence simultaneously spread through it. I casually leaned forward while I sat in my chair, and I stared back at everyone in the room to maintain the deadlock. But eventually, Zane gave in and broke the atmosphere. "Wait, Kai? Didn't you say you were just a first year?" Zane abruptly jolted up in his seat, and I turned to him with a smile before giving him the thumbs up. "Yep, this is my first year, teaching." "Why do you have a student uniform on, then?" It's a long story short, I had to borrow a spare uniform since someone spilled tea on my shirt. I was about to go into more detail, but before I could say another word, one of the girls by the window, the one with the long black hair and purple eyes, stood up with a serious expression. "Well, if you really are our professor, do you have some way to prove it? Even if you weren't wearing a student uniform, you look a little too young, and I don't come here to mess around." Hey, wait, do I actually have anything that proves I'm a professor? I don't remember Mary giving me a badge or anything like that. I still don't have any ID other than my guild and my library cards. Well, you see, I tried to stall for time, as I was thinking about how to prove my identity when I heard a knock at the door, and a voice of my savior sounded out from behind it. "Excuse me, may I come in for a moment?" Professor Barlam's voice echoed in from the hallway outside moments later. He opened up the door before stepping in. "Hello, everyone. I'm just dropping in to check and see if everything's well. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Oh, perfect, Professor Barlam. You came just at the right time. I need your help for a bit. I already introduced myself as their professor, but my students say they don't believe me." "Well, sure, Professor Kyle. Why are you wearing a student uniform?" "The headmistress got my shirt wet while I was in her office earlier, so she told me to go borrow a spare uniform. But honestly, looking at how much trouble it's caused, I should have just kept my original outfit. Now, can you please tell my students that I'm not lying?" Maybe he was feeling sick or something, but while I was explaining my unfortunate situation to him, for some reason Professor Barlam's face turned red, and he let out a few surprised coughs before making an announcement to the class. "Well, it looks like, due to some personal circumstances, Professor Kyle has been forced to borrow a uniform for now. So, with him being a mannerless young man, I can understand why you all might have your reservations, but as head of the alchemy department, I can verify that Professor Kyle is indeed the professor for this class." Mannerless? Zane's voice finally echoed around the room as everyone in the class had a surprised look on their face after they probably tried to sense my non-existent mana signature. The black-haired girl sat down and crossed her arms once Professor Barlam verified me. "Anyway, if there isn't anything else, I'll be leaving now. I still have to check in on the rest of the professors." "I should be good now, thanks, Professor Barlam." "No problem. Good luck with your class, then." Professor Barlam subsequently left the room, and then an awkward silence returned as I turned to face everyone with a smile on my face before clapping my hands together to get their attention. "Alrighty then. Let's get started. I guess everyone should introduce themselves. First, just tell everyone your name and your goal. You can start off, Zane." "Me? All right, buddy. This is all I can do for you right now. I believe in you, so take the chance and make a good first impression on the girls. It doesn't have to be anything special. Just show them you're a nice social guy. Break through and accomplish your dreams, Zane." The glint in my eyes sharpened a bit as I sent out a passionate telepathic message to my fellow wizard. Zane froze for a second and stared back at me before closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. A moment passed before he came back to his senses with flames of passion in his eyes. He stood up confidently, cleared his throat before giving a brief introduction of himself. "Hello, Hello, everyone. My name is Zane Royhard, and my goal, no, my life's purpose is to get a girlfriend. All right, Zane, you idiot. I slammed my head in the table as Zane immediately threw the chance I gave him right out the window. Cold sweat ran down my back while I sat back up and desperately waved my hands to signal him to stop. But alas, all it did was make the passion burn even brighter in his eyes. It's no use, Kai. I'm grateful for the chance you gave me, but I won't stop. You don't understand yet. There's no way I can compete with these two, so I need something to make me unique. And even if I lie about my personality now, I can't hide it forever. Everyone will find out eventually anyway, so I might as well be honest. While I admire your resolve, Zane, please stop. I'm begging you. I can't watch my fellow comrades suffer like this anymore. It's getting pretty sad to watch. Look, one of the girls is staring at you like you're a weirdo, and the other one can't even bear to look at you. She's already put her head down. I'll get a girlfriend by the end of the year, even if it's the last thing I do. And with that last outburst, I let a pained sigh as Zane sat back down in his seat. All right. I guess you can go next. I made eye contact with Zane's black-haired friend, who was whispering to Zane in a panic as he stood up awkwardly before introducing himself with a slightly embarrassed smile. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry about my friend here. He's a little bit on the edge recently. Anyway, my name is Halpert Elion, and due to some special circumstances, I have to get stronger soon so I can save those who need my help and protect the people around me. I'll be giving it my all, so thanks for having me. Halbert's embarrassed smile changed to a kind yet determined one as the radiance of his main character's aura illuminated the room after he finished his introduction. Ugh, my eyes, it's too bright. The level of his main character aura is insane. It's too much to handle for just a small side character like me. I averted my eyes from the radiance that Halbert was emitting and gave Zane a distressed look before sending another telepathic message to my fellow wizard. Zane, I'm sorry I doubted you. You were right. Any nice guy persona you could have faked would have been overshadowed instantly by this monster. He even has the black hair and the eyes of a generic self-insert protagonist. You don't stand a chance with any woman when he's around. They'll be all inexplicably falling all over themselves just by being within 500 feet for an hour. Zane looked back at me as he wiped the tears from his eyes, and he nodded as he sent the mental reply back to me. Now you see what I'm up against, Kai? There's no way. I can't beat Halbert at being a nice guy. I'm better off trying to be myself. I exhaustedly gasped for breath and rubbed my eyes as Halbert sat down while his radiance finally started to die out. All right, you can go next then. I stared at the last member of our trio of boys, one with blue hair. He stood up and he was brooding with a slightly stoic expression on his face. My name is Rengus Selfred, and I'm only here for one reason, to get stronger. Strong enough to surpass this certain man. Rengus glared at Halbert for a moment, and he made his declaration before closing his eyes and sitting back down again. Oh, I see. So he's the edgy rival. Let me guess. This whole motivation to get stronger is probably extremely one-dimensional and fueled by something along the lines of, I'll prove that I'm stronger than you, Halbert, or I'll show you that I'm better. Well, that is until Halbert's natural plot armor eventually pulls a deus ex machina when he's about to lose. Give him some sort of incredible broken power from the air that's powered by friendship or something stupid like that. And Rengus is forever delegated to the impossible feat of trying to catch up to the main character's plot armor. He'll be stuck forever as a Vegeta to Halbert's Goku. No wonder Zane showed his true colors immediately. His friends have already got the nice guy and bad boy personifications filled, and they're damn good at it. From what I can tell so far, one of them is just a real body away from being a literal cardboard cutout protagonist, with almost no personality besides being nice. And the other one just needs a set of spiked black clothes before he'll be teleporting behind people and cutting paper from 10 feet away with just the edge of his radiating from him. There's no way Zane's acting could compete with those two character tropes on legs. Okay, nice to know. Let's move on then. I turned my head and looked towards the other side of the room, to the black-haired girl as she stood up and introduced herself while glancing around the room. I'm Sophie Carlyle, and my goal is to become a master of every type of alchemy, a grand alchemist. Wait, your motivation is actually making sense. You are surprisingly normal. Normal? Oh, thank God. I thought I would be stuck here with a bunch of weirdos after the first three. We only needed a few more walking cliches before we formed the time-honored fantasy RPG hero party. But it looks like at least one of you is normal. Well, normal enough. Kai, you traitor! You're calling me a weirdo? You're in the same boat as me, aren't you? I wiped the sweat off my forehead and revealed a smile as I ignored the verbal complaints of my good green-haired friend while Sophie sat back down with a slightly confused look on her face. All right, last one. We all looked towards the blonde, elven girl who was sitting next to Sophie. She still had her head down, and we stared at her for an awkward moment in silence before Sophie nudged her arm while whispering to her. She slowly looked up at everyone with red faces and stood stiffly like a robot. After a glance in my direction for a moment, she immediately averted her eyes and looked down while fiddling with her hands. Hello, everyone? Wait, actually, now that I've got a good look at her face, she seems faintly familiar, like I've seen her somewhere before. Yeah, I have definitely met her before, but I just can't put my finger on when. I stared at her intensely while trying to delve into the depths of my memory, but the longer I stared at her, the more nervous she became, and eventually, I gave up and just asked her, have we met before? Yeah, we have, Professor Kyle. She let out a surprised whimper before stuttering out her confirmation. I finally remembered where I met her after hearing that faintly similar whimper. She was the receptionist at the guild in Delhurst. When I registered as an adventurer, I remember now. The one who ran away from me. Oh, wait. You were the receptionist at the guild the day I registered. Small world, huh? Who would have thought that you would end up as my student? Anyway, I'm sorry if I frightened you last time. Please don't run away again. I gently smiled at her and went fully red to the top of her ears and covered her face with her hands before ducking behind the lecture hall desk. It's just gonna be a repeat of last time, isn't it? Seriously, what did I do wrong? I see. Well, sorry, but I guess you'll have to take another class. I'll be handing my resignation in by the end of the day, since it seems like whether it's the Adventurers Guild or even my own classroom, I'm not wanted in either. Maybe one day I'll even see one of you again. Tears flowed out of my eyes as I picked up my satchel and began to walk towards the door with a depressed smile on my face. Wait, Professor Kyle? I stopped in my tracks as the girl's nervous voice sounded out from behind me as I turned around to see her head peeking over the desk. She made eye contact with me for a moment before turning around and muttering to herself as she slightly slapped her cheeks with both hands. Receptionist girl stood up again and turned around to face me with a burning red face while talking in a soft voice. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to run away like that the first time. I'm just very shy, so please forgive me if it seems like I'm running away. Honestly, I'm happy to see you again, Professor Kyle, so please let me finish my introduction. My name is Rena. Rena She had bit her tongue. There was a moment of fluffy silence as we watched Rena cutely cover her mouth, then duck under the desk again with a red face before I called out to her in a gentle voice. It's okay. You don't have to talk so fast. Just take your time. There's no rush. Rena slowly stood up again, while trembling slightly before continuing with tears in her eyes. Rena Selfley. And my goal is to overcome my shyness so I can be in your care. Thank you very much. Rena gave a quick bow towards me before sitting down in her seat and relaxing all the tension in her body away. She melted backwards into her chair with a dead eye and blank smile as she muttered something under her breath while Sophie consoled her. Well, I don't know what ancient alchemy can do for your shyness, but to each of their own, I guess. Well, at the very least, her goals probably are the most reasonably achievable out of all of them. Actually, wait a second. Did you just say her last name was Selfie? Rihanna, are you by chance related to the headmistress? As I asked Rena with a nervous smile on my face, she immediately snapped back to life with a small exclamatory squeal and fumbled around for a moment in her seat before answering me. Yes, Headmistress Silvery is my aunt. Is there anything wrong? Looks like I haven't escaped Mari's touch just yet, huh? What is this? A bloodline curse? Even after I finally escaped that paperwork-filled hellhole, she sends her niece over to remind me of my suffering under her hand. What's next? Will she start showing up to my class herself? No, nothing's wrong. Just wondering. I let out a dry laugh before sitting back down and letting out a sigh with a depressed smile on my face as I slumped forward onto my desk. Well, I guess it's about time to start class. After a moment, I slowly got up out of my chair, turned around, and picked up a piece of chalk before writing self-study on the board in big letters. All right, everyone. Your first assignment today is to do some serious self-reflection on why you decided to learn ancient alchemy. Don't worry, I get paid by the hour, so take your time. I returned to my seat, reached into my bag to pull out the book I was reading earlier before nonchalantly leaning back in my chair and opening it up to where I'd left off. There was a silence in the room as everyone stared at me in disbelief before Sophie finally got her temper and stood up. What the hell do you mean self-study? We're here because we want to learn ancient alchemy. We don't even have a textbook or any material to study. What's the point of coming to your class if you don't even teach us anything? Oh, well, I believe that first you need to look deep inside yourself and find a peace within your inner soul before starting to learn ancient alchemy. Trust me, it's an age-old tradition. That's the most idiotic, pointless tradition I've ever heard of, and if you're going to make an excuse, then at least make it believable. Damn. Well, it was worth a try, at least. All right, fine. You guys can study this, then. I rummaged through my bag again and pulled out the first monster core I could as Rena held Sophie back. The small, crystalline monster core in my hand glistened with a light green as I moved my eyes towards Sophie and Rena to glance at it for a moment. Once I confirmed that it was a wind element monster core, my field of vision moved back to my books as I placed the monster core on the table, got up again, erased the self-study that was wrote on the board, and a few moments later, my free hand picked up a piece of chalk again, and I quickly scribbled the first alchemy circle that came to my mind as I continued reading my book. There, done. Once I finished lazily drawing the circle, I placed the chalk back down as Sophie's angry voice sounded out behind me once more. What do you mean done? Do you think I'm an idiot? I returned to the table, picked up the monster core as I ignored Sophie's rambling before placing the monster core against the alchemy circle. There's no way an alchemy circle like that would work. Look, one of the lines isn't even. The gate burst. Single cast. Active. The alchemy circle and monster core both immediately lit up with green light, and a strong burst of wind blasted out in all directions as everyone immediately hung into the desks and covered their heads. When the wind finally died down, their bags had been thrown to the back wall of the room, and their clothes were still fluttering a little bit. There was absolute silence as I sat back down. I placed the half-used monster core on the table and turned to the next page in my book. Everyone stood there with a dumbfounded expression as they stared at the alchemy circle for a few moments before Sophie ran up to the chalkboard to inspect it. That's impossible! How did it work? It's just regular chalk and the circle doesn't even look like it was drawn correctly. She gazed intensely at the alchemy circle for a while before running back and grabbing a notebook to copy down as everyone else walked up to the blackboard. I glanced at the clock to see about half an hour had passed since the class started, and I clapped my hands again to get their attention. All right, there you go. I guess your new assignment can be analyzing this alchemy circle. Just tell me what you all have at the end of class today. I picked up my book again before I saw Zane run over to me with an excited look on his face. Kai, how did you do that? That was insane. It was almost as strong as a third circle wind spell. Third circle. If I remember correctly, Gale Burst should be somewhere around the level of a solid fourth circle wind spell, but I guess this one was kind of weak for some reason. Well, maybe we'll find out after analyzing it. At least they still use the circle system for magic. I just assumed that the current modern magic system was similar to the old one, just with a few new tricks here and there and maybe some new terms. But it looks like they still call them circles. I guess the magic system hasn't changed much at all in the last 1,000 years, but honestly, I doubt they could create a completely new system for magic unless there was a huge overhaul in how it's fundamentally used. You see, the way most magic works is that a person channels mana into the surroundings, and that mana naturally forms into a magic circle based on the mental image of that person, the type of mana being channeled, and the specific way they channel it. Most chants are only there to help build up a mental image of the person casting the spell, which is why if someone is skilled enough at controlling mana and is strong enough in the mental image of the spell without the chant can be shortened or even omitted entirely. And even among chants, while there was a standard chant for almost every basic spell back then, the chants for most spells don't need to be the standard ones at all, and they can even vary depending on the person. However, the natural formation of magic circles does have a limit, as mana can only condense naturally to a certain point, and while it is far from the absolute critical limit possible, after the natural limit is reached, mana can't be condensed anymore, unless the person casting the spell artificially condenses it themselves, which requires extremely precise control of mana. In the beginning, most high-level mages did exactly that. They trained specifically to raise their control of mana to an insanely high level, so they could artificially condense tons of mana into a naturally formed magic circle. This level of mana control usually took decades or even centuries of training for the normal person to acquire. And even after that, once you got to the higher level spells, the slightest mistake during the process of condensing mana could lead to the whole spell backfiring and exploding. So there weren't that many high-level mages at first, but eventually, mages found a different solution. One day, some mages came up with the revolutionary idea that since condensing mana into a single magic circle beyond the natural limit wasn't very efficient, then they could just use more than one circle, and thus the magic circle system was born. So instead of artificially condensing tons of mana into a single circle, mages formed multiple circle layers on top of each other and let them all reach a natural condensation limit. This still took a decent amount of mana control, but the level necessary for that was nowhere near as high as what was needed for the original method, and eventually they created a system where magic was separated and classified based on a level of naturally formed magic circles required to cast it. The most basic spells still only used one circle, but as the spells got more powerful and complex, the number of circles needed to cast it increased until it hit the limit of normal spells, which was 9 circles. Any spells above the level of 9 circles tended to be unstable, and usually needed to be formed by natural laws instead of mana, which, despite being vastly more concentrated and powerful, was usually more difficult to form into magic circles, or wasn't even able to be naturally formed as magic circles at all. And as such, many mages who reached that level of using natural laws to replace the mana either fell back to the original condensation method of using a single magic circle or completely dropped the use of magic and magic circles and instead learned to manipulate the special properties of the natural laws to generate supernatural phenomena or techniques, which was basically equivalent to circle-less magic in some cases. Anyway, I think we've rambled on a bit too long with my history lesson on magic. After returning to my senses, I turned to Zane with a serious face as I put down my book for a moment. Zane, do you want me to answer your question as a professor, or do you want the real answer? The real answer. Don't regret your decision, then. I grabbed Zane's shoulder as his face turned serious, and he nervously gulped. Look, Zane, the truth is, I have no idea. I wiped the serious expression off my face in a heartbeat and gave Zane a wry smile as I casually shrugged my shoulders. Huh? What do you mean you have no idea? Aren't you a professor of ancient alchemy? How did you draw the alchemy circle, then? You're supposed to be the one that knows how it works. Well, truth be told, I don't really know the specifics. It just works. As long as you draw the circle exactly like I did, it'll function perfectly. And once you get enough experience drawing alchemy circles, you'll get an idea of the basic shapes and markings and what they'll end up doing when you put them together. It's like a chemical reaction. You don't need to know how it works, just that the reactants are to make a certain product. Zane just stood there with a disappointed expression as I patted him on the shoulder. Hey, look. I could have lied to you about knowing everything and given you some fake answer to keep you wondering and keep your curiosity alive, but you were the one that wanted to know the truth, so there you go. I mean, you're right, I'm still kind of disappointed. Zane sighed and went back to the rest of the class gathered around the blackboard, and it almost seemed like he was being interrogated by his conversation with them, but that's none of my business. I moved my chair over to the window and opened it a bit and leaned back in my seat again and continued reading. The sunlight shone in through the window, illuminating the pages of the book in my hands as a faint breeze blew by and the scent of 5 students talking and standing around the blackboard played out to me for the next few hours. After Zane told them about his conversation with me, the rest of the class didn't believe him at first. And by they, I mean Sophie, came over to ask me some complicated questions about the alchemy circle, like what the directional flow of the mana was, or what the minimum necessary mana attunement level for the drawing material was. But I didn't know any of the answers to their questions, and Zane already told them the truth anyway, so I honestly gave them the same answer. It just works. A little bit after that, we had lunch. It was mostly just me talking with the boys about random stuff since Rena and Sophie ate together on the other side of the room. And after lunch, I just sat by the window again to read for a few more hours as the class gathered once more to analyze the alchemy circle until the end of class. I let out a lazy chuckle and flipped to the next page of my book as the sound of everyone chatting in the background began to die down. A few more minutes passed, and I was about a quarter of the way through the page in my book when I heard Sophie call out to me, "Professor Kyle, there, we're done with the analysis." I lowered my book to see Sophie standing in front of me with a sulky pout on her face while holding out a small stack of papers. I took the stack of papers from her and flopped them onto my desk quickly to see the pages upon pages of densely packed diagrams and notes on the alchemy circle. Good job, everyone. I'll look over it and get back to you sometime soon. I gave the class a sheepish smile and threw the stack of papers into my bag as Sophie let out a sigh. Look, while I can't say much for your work ethic or your theoretical knowledge, after analyzing that alchemy circle, I have to admit that you're at least a professor capable of using high-level ancient alchemy. And probably one of the best I've met when it comes to your field, to be honest. Your idea of drawing outside the outer edge of the alchemy circle is innovative in concept. I've never seen it before, and you even somehow made it work with just regular chalk, so please let me keep some level of respect for you. If not as a professor, then at least as a fellow alchemist. Wait a second. Going past the outer edge of the circle, what are you talking about? There's no way an alchemy circle like that would work properly. I gave Sophie a puzzled look, and she gave me a similar expression while we stared at each other for a moment. Huh? What? What do you mean? It's right there in your own damn circle. Look! Sophie pointed out the blackboard behind me, and I turned around to look at the alchemy circle I drew this morning. After following the trajectory of her finger, I noticed a stray mark that slightly went past the outer edge of the alchemy circle. Oh, crap, you're right. There's a small line sticking out. Sorry, everyone. I guess my drawing was a little sloppy. I probably didn't lift the chalk completely off the board when I finished, and I went past the outer edge at the end. No wonder it was a little weaker than usual. I walked up immediately and erased that little bit that went past the outer edge of the circle as I grabbed the monster core again with my other hand and held it up to the new, correctly drawn alchemy circle. All right, here we go. This should be a little stronger now. Gale Burst, single cast, active. Wait, a little stronger? I turned around with a smile. But what met my eyes was terror on my students' faces as those in the back ducked behind desks for cover. Sophie desperately looked around for cover too before a green light shone from behind me, and I realized my mistake. Oh, wait, I shouldn't have activated it. I immediately dove forward and grabbed Sophie to cover her with my body, as a deafening explosion of air burst out from behind me. Every window in the room shattered instantly. The door was smashed out into the hallway, and I was hurled into the wall at the back of the room. I hugged Sophie tight in midair to shield her body from the blast and managed to turn myself so that my back slammed against the wall instead of Sophie's. The wall cracked under the impact as we crashed onto it before the vestiges of the raging wind rushed through the hair and our clothes. There was absolute silence as the wind finally died down again and everyone poked their heads out from behind the lecture hall desks to stare at the back of the room with dazed expressions. I crawled out from behind the last row of desks as I loosened my grip on Sophie, patted the dust off her head, and placed her down on the ground, safe again and sound. After looking around for a second at everyone staring at me, along with the destruction in the room, I promptly made an announcement to calm them all down. Unfortunately, it seems like a small mishap has occurred on my end, so with that, class today will be dismissed. Don't worry too much about the damage. I'll get the classroom fixed up by tomorrow. See you all then. All right. Whose budget should I slash to fix this? The magic department? No, they're already running dry. The business department? Well, they're almost self-sufficient. Oh, I got it. The weapons department. They just got that new training field, so they probably won't need anything else for a while. Looking at last year's budget, they've had it too good for too long anyway. I promptly walked through the rubble to my satchel and pulled out the master budget notebook that Mary had given me earlier before and began to flip through it and made some changes.